The Lord said to me, the world is spinning back. Hear me as I hear the Lord. The world is spinning back to an asset-backed currency, says the Spirit of the Lord. I repeat, the world is spinning back to an asset-backed currency, says the Spirit of the Lord. I want you to understand what is happening. The Lord continues to speak, and He says that I shall collapse. The Lord is saying, I shall collapse the American dollar in the global trade market, and never again shall it gain dominance, for judgment is coming to America. Judgment is coming to American dollar, says the Spirit of the Lord. This is speaking to you. And so if there is any American that is watching, judgment is coming to America, an economical judgment against the American dollar. Hear me as I hear the Lord. And that the Lord continued to speak with me in the vision, and He took me into the dragon nation from the east. He took me to the dragon nation of the east, and the Lord made me see that the horn, H-O-R-N, that the horn, the financial horn of the dragon of the east, which is China, the financial horn of China, yuan, the financial horn of China, yuan, the dragon from the east shall gain dominance. The Spirit of the Lord has made it clear that the financial horn, yuan, Y-U-A-N, the financial currency of China, yuan, the dragon from the east shall gain dominance of usage. And the target, the reason is to come against the dollar of the Americans. Is to come against the dollar of the American people from the West.
Brazil's President Lula da Silva is visiting China, and usually diplomatic visits are a boring affair. They stick to a usual pattern: the bilateral meetings, the signing of agreements, photo ops, and leaders waving at cameras. But President Lula is breaking away from tradition. Last evening, he took everyone by surprise. He launched a very public war against the US dollar. Lula made some scathing remarks. Listen to this. And I'm quoting, "Why should every country have to be tied to the dollar for trade? Who decided the dollar would be the world's currency? Why can't a bank like the BRICS Bank have a currency to finance trade between Brazil and China, between Brazil and other BRICS countries? Today, countries have to chase after dollars to export when they could be exporting in their own currencies." And Lula da Silva did not stop there. He trained his guns on Western financing institutions next, specifically at the International Monetary Fund or the IMF. This is what he said: "No bank should be asphyxiating countries' economies the way the IMF is doing now with Argentina, or the way they did with Brazil for a long time and every third world country. No leader can work with a knife to their throat because their country owes money." These are some very strong words, and Lula chose the perfect stage to say all of this. He picked the perfect occasion to launch his war against the US dollar. He delivered his impassioned speech at the New Development Bank, better known as the BRICS Bank. BRICS is a grouping. It stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, BRICS. These are the world's largest economies, largest emerging economies. Their group is called BRICS. They've set up a bank called the New Development Bank. It was established in 2015. It's a multilateral development bank and it provides financing for infrastructure and development projects. The bank has members beyond BRICS nations. They include countries like Egypt, Bangladesh, Uruguay, and the UAE. A former Brazilian president is now in charge of this bank. Her name is Dilma Rousseff. She's the bank's new chief executive. Yesterday was the inauguration ceremony, and that's why Lula was there. Under him, Brazil is taking a very aggressive stand against the US dollar. Lula believes the BRICS can offer a better alternative. So with a Brazilian at the helm of a major BRICS institution and the world order in a state of flux, President Lula is making a push for a BRICS currency. Like we've told you earlier, this idea has been around for a while. It's not new. Russia, too, has been asking the BRICS to consider this proposal. And now Lula is pushing this idea, and that too quite strongly and quite publicly. The question is, will the other members go for it? Because don't forget the China factor. Lula has been leaning towards China. Before launching a public tirade against the US dollar, Brazil and China reached an agreement of their own, a deal to trade in their local currencies and to not use the US dollar to conduct bilateral trade. So China uses the yuan and Brazil the real. This deal was sealed before Lula flew down to Beijing. And bilateral agreements like these are far easier to secure, but the idea of a larger BRICS currency is going to be a tough sell. For starters, will India support the idea? Will India work with China on a common currency? We ask this because this would encourage interdependency, and India at this point is hoping to achieve the opposite, to cut its dependence on China. So the plan for a BRICS currency may not take off just yet. But that doesn't mean that Lula is not on the right track. His statement against the dollar only echoes the larger sentiment. The dominance of the greenback is under threat, and the challengers are rising.
Eu toda noite me pergunto por que todos os países estão obrigados a fazer seu comércio lastreado no dólar. Por que nós não podemos fazer o nosso comércio lastreado na nossa moeda? Por que nós não temos o compromisso de inovar? Quem é que decidiu que era o dólar a moeda depois que desapareceu o ouro como paridade? Por que não foi o ien? Por que não foi o real? Por que não foi o peso? Porque as nossas moedas eram fracas, as nossas moedas não têm valor em outros países. Então, se escolheu uma moeda sem levar em conta a necessidade que nós precisamos ter uma moeda, sabe, que transforma os países numa situação um pouco mais tranquila. Porque hoje, um país precisa correr atrás de dólar para poder exportar. Quando ele poderia exportar a sua própria moeda, e os bancos centrais certamente poderiam cuidar disso. E, portanto, eu não sei quando, não pode ter pressa, Dilma, porque em economia a gente não pode ter pressa, a gente não pode ter... Você está num país em que se tem uma coisa que se cuida bem aqui é paciência. Se tem uma coisa que o chinês sabe ter é paciência. Então, se for necessário ter um pouco de paciência, a gente tem que ter. Mas por que um banco como os BRICS não pode, sabe, ter uma moeda que possa financiar a relação comercial entre Brasil e China, entre Brasil e os outros países dos BRICS? É difícil, porque tem gente mal acostumada, porque todo mundo depende de uma única moeda.
G7 foreign ministers are meeting in Japan as we speak. And they're making dramatic statements. They're issuing threats. They say Russia will be slapped with more sanctions and countries that help Russia will face consequences. But it all sounds hollow When you look at how Russia is faring, it has found ways to bypass sanctions. Russia has proved that it doesn't need the West to trade. Let me tell you about Moscow's latest win. This came in Bangladesh. Dhaka wants to do business with Moscow, and they're ready to pay Moscow in the Chinese yuan. So Bangladesh will make payments to Russia in the Chinese currency. They've bypassed the dollar. And we're talking about a major payment here, worth some $300 million. It will be denominated in the yuan. Do you know what this payment is for? A nuclear power plant. Russia is building a power plant for Bangladesh. It is located near the capital city of Dhaka. The project is worth around $12 billion. It is being financed through a Russian loan. And Bangladesh has 28 years to repay this loan. Right now, it is returning a part of the loan. That's $300 million. Dhaka was supposed to make the payment earlier, but Western sanctions delayed it. You see, Russia has been cut off from the global banking system. So they started looking for alternatives. First, Russia wanted the payment in rubles. It was hesitant to accept the yuan. It feared losses after currency conversion. But Dhaka refused to accept this arrangement, so there was a deadlock. It lasted for over a year. Now it seems Russia has changed its mind. It is ready to accept the Chinese yuan, and Bangladesh is happy to pay in the yuan. But why does Bangladesh prefer the yuan? For multiple reasons. For starters, yuan is one of the official currencies of Bangladesh. Since 2017, Dhaka has been adding the yuan to its currency reserves. But when compared with the dollar, the share of the yuan is minor. In 2017, just 1% of Bangladesh's reserves were in yuan. In August last year, this went up to 1.32%. What about the US dollar? Its share has declined over time. In 2017, 81% of Bangladesh's reserves were in the greenback, 81%. In 2022, this went down to 75%. So while the shift is minor, it is still significant. Dhaka has started to like the yuan. In September last year, the Bangladesh Bank issued orders. This is the Central Bank of Bangladesh. It issued instructions for all commercial banks in the country. It said they could maintain accounts in the yuan, also settle cross-border transactions in the Chinese currency. Last month, Dhaka made another move. The focus this time was on the exporters. They were allowed to hold some of their proceeds in the yuan. This is de-dollarization in action. Bangladesh is just the latest case study. In recent months, many countries have dumped the dollar. In the month of March, for instance, Brazil abandoned the greenback. China and Brazil are using their national currencies to trade now. Recently, Brazil's president, Lula da Silva, gave a speech. He openly criticized the hegemony of the US currency. Now, Lula wants the BRICS to come up with its own currency. BRICS, as you would know, is a grouping of leading emerging economies: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. These are the members. And Russia, too, is pushing the BRICS. It wants the group to challenge the US dollar. Now, Bangladesh's move may give this push a new momentum. It only confirms what the world already knows, that Russia is not a pariah state. It has a place in the global economy, and it remains an important player. The West may not want to do business with Russia, but there are other countries who do. And they're coming up with alternative ways to settle trade deals. India, too, is in this mix. India wants to deepen trade ties with Russia. The Russian trade minister was in Delhi yesterday, and he said Moscow and New Delhi are discussing a trade deal, a free trade agreement. It could be in the works. India is a key buyer of Russian oil. It also buys key defense supplies from Russia. And this is likely to continue. Then what is the need for a trade deal now? Well, Russia is interested in buying several Indian goods. Reports say their wish list includes more than 500 products from India. So a Russia-India trade deal will make these purchases easier. It will also accelerate the pivot away from the US dollar.